I'm mainly here talking about water-only policies for schools, for sports teams, sports centres and other organisations that mainly have kids. So we've come up with this sweet enough title, which is basically we're saying our kids are sweet enough and water's fine. I gave a talk with Irene Van Dyke in December, and we launched a New Zealand Dental Association program. I'm also the New Zealand Dental Association spokesperson, and her quote was, when we exercise, we sweat water, and we don't need to replace it with Coke, Fanta or Powerade. And I thought that was a very powerful message coming from one of New Zealand's most famous netball players. So the reason I'm so keen on kids drinking water and unflavoured milk is because the number one cause of tooth decay in New Zealand is sugar, and the number one source of sugar in the diet actually comes from sugary drinks. I have some teeth from Jasper here. There are his 11 teeth. I'm just going to pass it around just so you can see what decayed teeth look like. $4,000 a pop. It's also a major equity issue. We know, actually, Susan's from South Auckland. South Auckland has a very high proportion of Pacifica. 95% of all Pacifica in New Zealand, 95%, are either overweight or obese. So it's not just about tooth decay, it's also about obesity, and more to the point, it's actually about type 2 diabetes. We'll come to that a little bit later on. We actually have the third highest rates of obesity in the OECD, which is the sort of the Western world. We also have the third highest rates of childhood obesity. I think Greece and Italy beat us. The person on the left was from Nelson Girls College. So she's a very interesting example. She was 15 when she came to see me as a private dentist. That's before I saw the light and moved to the DHB. So I was a private dentist, turned up, all the kids in New Zealand get free dental checkups. She came to see me, you're probably about 15, are you? Yeah. Perfect. So she came to see me, just like you, opened up, took some x-rays, perfect teeth. So 15 she came to see me, no problems. A year later, you'll be 16 a year later, she came back to see me, and this is the problem. She needed 14 fillings and 2 extractions in 1 year. And I asked her, what has she been doing? Turns out she ended up working at McDonald's. And at McDonald's, you get free soft drinks, as long as you want, much as you want while you're working there. So in 1 year, she ended up having 14 fillings and 2 extractions. I ended up billing the DHB $2,500, which is a crazy waste of money, very expensive can of Coke. And then I got on my merry way. But that was the case that got me thinking. It was about 5 years ago. And ever since then, I've got on this whole sugary drink-free, water-only policy bandwagon. Should only have an absolute maximum of 6 teaspoons of sugar per day, per person. Young children should only have 3. Now that's not a target, that's just an absolute maximum. Example is, a can of Coke has 9 teaspoons of sugar. So if I go home and give my 8-year-old son a can of Coke, which of course I wouldn't, he would get how many days worth of sugar? Any maths teachers here? Yeah? He'd get 3 days worth of sugar, which is quite a lot in one hit. Young kids should only be having 3, teenagers up to about 5, adults should only be having 6. This is the reality though. So the reality is that kids are having 10 times the amount of sugar per person per day. Adults are having about 5 times. So no wonder we have the third highest rate of obesity and the third highest rate of type 2 diabetes in the Western world. I had a meeting with the CEO of Coca-Cola last week, which was a sort of scary experience, and I was sickened by their notion that their main aim is to make money in New Zealand, primarily off kids and the low-income adults. And I was up there with the New Zealand Dental Association hat on, articulating our concern about her products causing so much pain and suffering. And her response was, stupid parents for giving these products to the kids. And I pulled her up and I said, that's exactly what the arms industry in the US say. They say, it's not our guns that are killing people, it's the stupid people pulling the trigger. Which in some sense is true, but it mitigates the problem that the gun or the sugary drink is actually causing so much pain and unnecessary suffering. But it's very difficult for parents to come up against the persuasive power of the world's most powerful advertising and marketing campaigners who Coca-Cola use. You know, they might like to say that this is what Coke causes: happiness and choice and barbecues in summer, but the reality is it causes tooth decay, obesity and type 2 diabetes. So if, you know, kids going along to Stoke School and they are having, say, 1 can of Coke a day, they are increasing their risk of obesity by 60%. If they are having 1 can of Coke a day or 1 can of V or Pepsi or even a glass of juice a day, they are increasing their risk of type 2 diabetes by 25%. So for the maths teachers here, they will realise that that's a massive increase. Just recently, just 2 years ago, at the end of 2015, there was this amazing paper published in the British Dental Journal that looked into diet drinks, artificially sweetened beverages, and juices in relation to the impact that they have on obesity and type 2 diabetes. And they were amazed that people drinking these artificially sweetened beverages actually had a bigger increase in BMI, body mass index, than the people drinking the full sugar drinks, which is very difficult for nutritionists and people like myself to get my head around. But when you look into the evidence and the study, they'd actually taken into consideration the confounding factors, which is, okay, I'm on a diet, I'm going to drink my Coke Zero, and then at lunchtime I'm going to go out and have my muffin. And people are saying, oh, that's why they're putting on weight. But they took that factor into consideration. People like Sir Peter Gluckman, who is the Prime Minister's Chief Science Advisor, has warned me about my talks. He came to one of my talks and he said, oh, you shouldn't be encouraging people to drink diet drinks, because he's more concerned about the diet drinks, I shouldn't call them diet drinks, the artificially sweetened beverages, than he is with the full sugar drinks, because of the issue of gut flora microbiota, and also the issue about people putting more weight on, and actually people coming down with type 2 diabetes. Top 10 selling items in New Zealand, top 10. So you can see that Coke's doing pretty well. First, third, 8th and 10th out of the 10 selling items. Coca-Cola 1.5, does anyone know how many teaspoons of sugar? You'll know. There's 40. There's 40 teaspoons. I often see kids, actually from schools who have principals or high schools here, going to school, drinking a 1.5 on the way to school, and I've also seen the same kid, when I ride my bike home, drinking another 1.5. So 1.5 has 40 teaspoons, so they're getting 80 teaspoons a day. They're only meant to be having 3. So no wonder they're ending up on the end of my forceps. I had a 5-year-old come to see me who needed 10 teeth taken out. He came to see me in the dental clinic clutching a bottle of Powerade, one of those blue ones. And I said to him, why are you drinking this? And he said to me, because Richie does. And I was just so outraged. Anyway, a reporter who was following me in Carrot Graham saw this Twitter exchange, published it in the page 3 of the Dominion Post the day after. And then the day after that, Whalelaw got onto it and said that, wrote this article that I was blaming Richie McCaw, captain of the All Blacks, for causing all these problems. And ironically, he does have a part to play, as does Dan Carter and all the other ones who, they take $1 million a year from Coke, him and Dan. So Chris Fleming is the CEO of the DHB, and 2 years ago he got rid of sugary drinks. The story is, I pulled out 54 teeth, resting my hand with ice at morning tea in the dental department, and I looked out the window and I saw a Coca-Cola truck delivering their products to the hospital, and I was so pissed off, or disappointed. I went to see him and I said, look, I've just taken out 54 teeth. There's 4 GAs. It's $16,000. I've just billed you $16,000, and I'm going to bill you $16,000 every Tuesday and every Friday of this year and next year and into the foreseeable future, which is $1 million a year. So I said, I highly recommend that you just stop the products coming into the hospital, because hospitals shouldn't be selling sickness. He agreed, and a month later we became the first hospital in New Zealand, and actually we found it in the world, to not sell sugary drinks. Last year we moved the next step, and you can see we got rid of the artificially sweetened beverages and the juices and the smoothies. So the original policy was a sugar sweetened beverage policy, which means only beverages that had added sugars. The next policy went sugary drinks and artificially sweetened beverages free, because what that also included was the diet drinks and also the juices and the smoothies. After the DHB went sugary drink free, I approached Nelson City Council, Rachel Reese, the mayor. I articulated our desire. She also followed suit. She became the first council in New Zealand where the council properties, events and premises no longer sell sugar sweetened beverages. It's a step in the right direction. And we've also been up and down the country. I spoke to Len Brown before he resigned. He also adopted a policy in the sports centres up in Auckland. Marlborough District Council over the hill, they have a policy. And I've spoken to Justin Lester, the Mayor of Wellington, a couple of weeks ago. They're thinking about adopting it. So more and more councils are also adopting it. But of course, schools need to adopt it. I mean, if the hospitals aren't selling it, why should schools partake in contributing to obesity, type 2 diabetes and tooth decay? So it's not just about having a guideline or policy, it's also about in terms of what they can bring in. It's also about what high schools can sell in the canteen. Obviously in the health curriculum it's important, and it's a bit ironic if the students are learning about health and the dangers of junk food and junk drinks, and then they go out to the canteen and buy a juice that's got 5 days worth of sugar in it, or a can of V that's got 15 teaspoons. So that needs to be modified. The school vicinity is a very interesting article. So the school vicinity is not only about ads, it's also about dairies selling junk food, junk drinks on the way to school. I've got a great slide afterwards which we can talk about this. Fundraising is a very interesting topic, particularly galas. So at the Hampden Street School we have a gala every year. One gala a couple of years ago there was parents selling Coke and juice. They made $1,000. I was a bit surprised. I went to the Parent Teachers Association the next week and said, look, is there any way you can stop selling sugary drinks at the school? This was before Don initiated the policy. And they said, sure, as long as you run a store. So the next year I ran a store where we sold bottled water, coconut water and low sugar smoothies. And it was a great success. We actually made $1,500 and we calculated that we took out 9 kgs of sugar just from that one event on that one day. I was on the radio talking to Guy and Espina about this last week because a policy actually came out, a study came out that said that they looked into the DMFT rate, the decayed, missing and filled rate from all the kids in Susan's school, compared that with the surrounding schools. Lo and behold, Susan's kids had a significantly reduced decay rate than the kids in the surrounding area. So it proves that the policy actually has a measurable impact. We also heard that some of the students lost so much weight that they had to order new school uniforms. Where's the leadership from the government? So in lack of leadership from the government, we are asking schools and sports organisations, sports teams to show leadership and just have a water-only policy. Not only is it good for teeth, obesity, diabetes, it's good for the sporting issues, but it's also good for learning aspirations because kids aren't so high on sugar when they get home. We know that 70% of primary schools have one now, 40% of intermediate schools, but only 13% of high schools in New Zealand up to last year had one. So it's a step in the right direction, but more needs to be done to initiate water-only policy. And what we're asking from the Minister was, with one fell signature, she could ensure that happens. But because she's ideologically opposed to it, we're reliant on leadership from the schools. We're not giving them alcohol to drink, but we are giving them sugary drinks. And it's these drinks that are causing so much harm, pain and suffering, and is actually costing taxpayers a lot of money. We want to reduce pain and suffering, but we also want to reduce we want to reduce the taxpayers' money that are actually spent on cutting off limbs. Type 2 diabetes is the number one reason we have amputations and the second most common reason we go blind. So it is a political issue, which is why the Dental Association spends so much time advocating and lobbying to schools, councils and sports organisations about the need to adopt the water-only policy. So thanks, and I'll leave it there.